You are invited to witness what love looks like when it stays. That's what I wrote on the wedding invitation I sent to the woman who abandoned me. She never came. But let me tell you why. That was the sweetest revenge I've ever tasted. I can't do this anymore. I need to be free. Those were the last words my mother left us. In a voicemail, not to her children, to their father, at 3:07 in the morning, after 20 years of silence. My name is Olivia Martinez. I'm the woman who learned that the cruelest abandonment can forge the strongest foundation, if you let it. But this story starts when I was 8 years old, believing love was permanent, families stayed whole, and when someone said forever, they meant it. It was 3:07 a.m. when the front door closed. I remember the sound clearly, even now. It wasn't slammed. It didn't echo. It was soft, like a secret, like someone trying not to wake the house they were walking out of. I was 8 years old. My little brother Danny was 5. We'd fallen asleep waiting for Mom to finish packing for our weekend camping trip. But when I woke up to pee, the tent bag was still in the hallway, unzipped and forgotten. And Mom's boots were gone. Dad was sitting on the floor in the kitchen, his back against the cabinets, holding a cold cup of coffee like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He looked up at me and just whispered, "She's gone, sweetheart. She left us. No warning, no goodbye note. Just an empty closet and a voicemail on Dad's phone that said, 'I can't do this anymore. I need to be free. She left us to be free.' Free. From what? From 2 children who adored her? From a husband who worked double shifts so she could stay home and find herself? We didn't understand it then, but we felt it, like a hole had been torn in our family. That night changed everything. But more than that, it changed me. My dad. He transformed after that moment. He hardened. Not cruel, never that, but quieter. More careful with his heart. Like every smile cost him something precious he couldn't afford to lose again. He never badmouthed her. Not once. But he also never said her name again. And my brother, Danny, he tried so desperately to be the man of the house. 5 years. Old, helping Dad with the laundry, patching his jeans with duct tape, holding my hand when I cried at school. But something about losing her made him reckless later on. By the time he was 16, he was already smoking, fighting, skipping school. I tried to keep him grounded. I tried to be the sister and the mother he never got to keep. But you can't fill a mother-shaped hole with sisterly love, no matter how fierce, no matter how willing. And me? I became the invisible child. Straight A's, perfect attendance, never late, never loud, never enough trouble to add to Dad's already crushing load. I learned to make myself small so others could breathe easier. I learned to anticipate needs before they were voiced. I learned that if I was perfect enough, maybe no one else would leave. I studied like my life depended on it, because in many ways, it did. Education became my escape route, my proof that I was worth something, my insurance policy against ever being powerless again. I watched other kids complain about their mother's rules, their mother's questions, their mother's worry, and I felt like I was observing life through glass. They had something to rebel against. I had an absence to navigate around. At school events, I watched Dad try to be 2 parents at once, cheering at my track meets while also taking photos, helping with bake sales while also chaperoning field trips. He never complained. But I saw the exhaustion in his shoulders, the way he'd close his eyes for just a moment longer than a blink when he thought no one was looking. So I made myself easier. Easier to love. Easier to raise. Easier to keep. I learned to braid my own hair by watching YouTube videos. I learned to cook dinner so Dad wouldn't have to worry about it after his 12-hour shifts. Learned to forge her signature on permission slips, because asking Dad to sign them felt like reminding him of everything we'd lost. But the real lesson, the one that would shape everything that came after, was this. I learned that love isn't Something you can earn through perfection. Real love stays through imperfection. Real love doesn't require you to minimize yourself to deserve it. I just didn't understand that lesson yet. The turning point came during my senior year, when I was applying for college scholarships. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Henderson, pulled me aside after class. "Olivia," she said, "you know you don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, right?" I stared at her, confused. "I'm fine, Mrs. Henderson." "You're exceptional," she corrected gently. "But you're also 17 years old. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because it would help your dad, or set a good example for Danny, or look good on an application?" I couldn't answer. Because I couldn't remember. That conversation planted a seed. The first small recognition that maybe I'd been living my life as an apology for existing, as compensation for the chaos my birth had allegedly brought to my mother's world. But then came the scholarship letter. Full ride. Architecture. When I told Dad, he cried for the first time since the night she left. "I'm proud of you, Liv," he said, his voice breaking. "You made it." And I had. But part of me still carried her shadow. Still wondered if I was inherently too much, too difficult, too demanding for love to stay. College was where I started to shed that skin. Away from the house where her absence lived in every corner. Away from the constant responsibility of being the easy child, I began to remember who I might have been if I'd never learned to make myself small. I joined the architecture program, not because it was practical or impressive, but because I loved the idea of building something that would last, something beautiful and strong that wouldn't just walk away. I made friends who had complicated families too, who understood that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you first teach you the hardest lessons about loving yourself instead. Learned that my hypervigilance, my ability to read a room, to anticipate needs, to solve problems before they exploded, wasn't just survival. It was a superpower that made me an incredible architect, an intuitive friend, and a natural leader. I learned that my independence wasn't a flaw to apologize for. It was strength forged in fire. Most importantly, I learned that the little girl who'd been left behind wasn't weak or disposable or too much. She was resilient. She was brave. She was enough, exactly as she was. By graduation, I wasn't the same girl who'd made herself invisible. I was a woman who took up space deliberately, who spoke her mind clearly, who built beautiful things that would outlast the people who'd tried to diminish her, was ready for whatever came next. Even if what came next was the return of the woman who'd taught me to question my own worth. But then came the scholarship. Full ride. Architecture. When I told Dad, he cried for the first time since the night she left. "I'm proud of you, Liv," he said. "You made it." And I had. But part of me still carried her shadow until the day she came back. 20 years. 20 years of silence. Then a Facebook message from a name I hadn't seen since I was 8. "Hi, Olivia. I'd love to reconnect. I heard about your graduation. Can we meet?" I stared at that message for hours. She didn't say sorry. She didn't explain. Just, "Hi. Dad told me it was my choice." "You don't owe her anything," he said quietly. "But you deserve peace." So I met her. At a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment. She looked older, but not bad. Designer scarf, manicured nails, like she'd been living a life that never included us. She talked like we were acquaintances catching up. "I've always loved architecture," she smiled. "I guess you got that from me." I didn't say much, just listened. Her voice, her excuses, her rewrites of history where she was the victim. "Your father and I, we were so young. The pressure of 2 kids, no money. I just needed space to grow." Space to grow. 20 years of space. "I think about you and Danny all the time," she continued, stirring her latte with perfectly manicured fingers. "I always hoped you'd understand when you got older. Sometimes love means letting go. But she hadn't let go. She'd abandoned ship. There's a difference between loving someone enough to leave and leaving because you can't be bothered to love. Then she asked the one question I'd been waiting for. Could I be there? At your wedding? I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You'll get an invitation." And I meant it. I spent 3 weeks crafting that invitation. Not the words. Those came to me the moment I walked out of that coffee shop. But the execution, the weight of the paper, the exact shade of gold for the lettering, the way the envelope would feel in her hands. I am an architect after all. I understand that the most impactful structures require careful planning. The invitation didn't go to her house. It went to her office, where she sat behind a sleek designer desk, sipping imported coffee, critiquing other people's dreams like decor samples. I hand-delivered it myself, walking past the receptionist with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "For Ms. Patricia Martinez," I said, placing it directly on her assistant's desk. "She's expecting this." The envelope was cream-colored cardstock, thick enough to feel substantial. The kind of paper that whispers important before you even open it. Her name was written in gold calligraphy, the same style I'd seen on her business cards when I'd looked up her firm online. But inside, instead of venue details, the RSVP card read, "You are invited to witness what love looks like when it stays. When it fights for what matters. When it protects instead of abandons. When it heals the wounds you caused and still dares to bloom." Tucked behind the invitation was a single photograph I'd had printed on the finest paper money could buy. The image was from our engagement session, Marcus and me laughing in the garden we'd planted together, surrounded by the kind of easy joy that comes from being truly seen. But it was the second photo that carried the real message. A picture from Danny's sobriety celebration dinner. All of us around Dad's kitchen table, the same table where he'd sat broken 20 years ago. Danny with his 1-year chip in his hand, his sponsor beside him, his girlfriend holding his other hand. Dad with tears in his eyes, finally allowing himself to believe his son was going to be okay. And me, no longer the invisible child trying to hold everyone together, but a woman surrounded by the family she'd helped build from the ashes of abandonment. On the back of that photo, in handwriting, she would instantly recognize the same careful script I'd practiced for hours to forge. "Permission slips," I wrote. "We didn't need you to survive, but we chose to thrive without you. This is what love looks like when it doesn't run away. When it gets harder, it gets stronger. You taught us that by showing us exactly what not to do." At the bottom, I added one final line. "Thank you for leaving. We became everything we were meant to be because you couldn't stay to limit us." I included no return address, no phone number, no way for her to respond, because this wasn't a conversation. It was a statement. 2 days later, my phone rang. An unknown number. Olivia? Her voice was smaller than it had been in the coffee shop, shakier. "I got your invitation." I let the silence stretch between us. "I don't understand," she continued. "There's no venue listed, no time. How am I supposed to—" "You're not," I said quietly. "You're not supposed to be anywhere, Mom. That's exactly the point." The word mom felt strange in my mouth after so many years. Not bitter, exactly. Just foreign. Like speaking a language I'd forgotten how to use. "But you said I could come," she whispered. And for the first time, I heard something that might have been genuine pain in her voice. "I said you'd get an invitation," I corrected. "And you did. You got to see exactly what you chose not to be part of. You got to witness what we built in the space you left empty." Another silence. Then, "Olivia, please. I know I made mistakes, but..." "Mistakes?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "Abandoning your children isn't a mistake, Patricia. It's a choice. One you made every single day for 20 years. I could hear her crying now. Soft, careful tears that probably didn't disturb her makeup. I was young, she said. I was scared. I didn't know how to be a mother. Neither did Dad, I replied. But he figured it out, every day, for 20 years. While you were finding yourself, he was finding ways to be everything we needed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. And maybe that apology would have meant something to the 8-year-old girl who'd blamed herself for not being enough to make her mother stay. Maybe it would have healed something in the teenager who'd made herself invisible to avoid causing more pain. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I know you are, I said. And I forgive you. Not for you, for me. Because carrying anger around for the rest of my life would only hurt the people who actually stayed. I hung up before she could respond. That was the last time we spoke. She never showed, but she sent peonies. My favorite, an old habit pretending to be a gesture. I left them outside the chapel. In the rain, unwrapped, unwelcomed. Because some flowers don't belong in the garden they once tried to poison. Some roots are better cut. And as I stood at the altar, surrounded by the kind of love that earned its place, not demanded it, I didn't feel grief. I felt freedom. We moved on. Quietly. Strongly. I built a home filled with laughter, music, and the kind of peace I used to dream about as a child curled up under the covers, pretending I couldn't hear the emptiness where a mother's voice should have been. Danny got sober, found a woman who loved him for his tender heart, not despite his scars. Dad walked me down the aisle and danced at my reception until his feet hurt, making up for all the school events where he'd had to be both parents at once. Marcus and I bought a house with a garden where we planted things that would grow for decades. We adopted a rescue dog who'd been abandoned too, but learned to trust again. We built the kind of life that feels solid underfoot, not perfect, but real. And then one day, a card arrived. No return address, just 5 words, scrawled in delicate handwriting. You were right. I'm sorry. I stared at those words for a long time. 5 words that might have meant everything to the 8-year-old girl who'd wondered what she'd done wrong. 5 words that came 22 years too late. I didn't reply, because the greatest revenge isn't yelling. It isn't begging for acknowledgement. It isn't even proving them wrong. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and needing absolutely nothing from them when you get there. So if you're watching this right now, maybe holding on to a grudge, a wound, or a name that still stings, let me say this. You don't need their apology to bloom. You just need to stop waiting for it. You don't need their presence to feel whole. You just need to stand in the life you built and realize you were enough all along. The people who are meant to stay will stay. The people who leave, they're teaching you something too. That your worth was never dependent on their ability to recognize it. Build something beautiful with the people who choose to stay. Love fiercely. Create boldly. Take up the space you deserve. And when someone from your past shows up wanting to claim credit for the person you became without them, send them an invitation to witness what love looks like when it doesn't walk away. Trust me. The view from the other side of healing is worth every step it took to get there. My name is Olivia Martinez, and this is the life I built when love walked out. And I didn't just survive. I soared. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear that they're enough, exactly as they are. Your support means everything to creators like me who believe in the power of turning our pain into purpose. What's your story of transformation? I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Until next time, keep building beautiful things.